Have you ever wondered how fragile life can be? Can a moment of joy turn into tragedy in the blink of an eye? Number 7. Natasha Richardson skiing. Natasha Richardson's life was cut short after what seemed like a minor skiing accident. The Tony Award-winning actress and member of the famous Redgrave acting dynasty was taking a beginner skiing lesson at Mont Tremblant Resort in Quebec in March 2009. At first, the accident appeared trivial. Richardson, who wasn't wearing a helmet, fell on a beginner slope. She initially refused medical attention, appearing fine and even joking about her tumble. She walked back to her hotel room. Within hours, however, the situation took a devastating turn. The 45-year-old actress began complaining of a severe headache. This seemingly minor symptom was actually the sign of something far more serious happening inside her brain. What Richardson didn't know was that she had suffered what medical professionals call an epidural hematoma, bleeding between the skull and the brain's covering. The condition deteriorated rapidly. By the time she reached the hospital, Richardson was in critical condition. Despite being flown to a New York hospital where she could receive specialized care, doctors couldn't save her. Natasha Richardson was pronounced dead on March 18, 2009, just 2 days after her fall. Her husband, actor Liam Neeson, was filming in Toronto when he received the devastating news. He rushed to her bedside where he had to make the heartbreaking decision to take her off life support after doctors confirmed she was brain dead. In accordance with her wishes, her organs were donated, bringing life to others even in her death. Richardson's death sent shockwaves through Hollywood and the theater world. It also sparked important conversations about ski safety and the use of helmets. Medical experts pointed out that had Richardson received immediate medical attention or been wearing a helmet, she might have survived. The condition that killed her is often called talk and die syndrome because victims can appear perfectly normal before rapidly deteriorating. The tragedy touched many lives beyond her immediate family. Richardson left behind 2 teenage sons and a legacy of performances in films like The Parent Trap and Made in Manhattan, as well as acclaimed stage work. Her mother, the legendary actress Vanessa Redgrave, spoke movingly about the loss of her daughter, calling her a glorious woman. Number 6. Dale Earnhardt NASCAR racing. The date February 18, 2001 is etched in the memory of NASCAR fans worldwide. It was on this day during the final lap of the Daytona 500 that one of racing's most revered figures met a tragic end. Dale Earnhardt, known as the Intimidator for his aggressive driving style and formidable presence on the track, crashed into a wall at approximately 160 mph. The crash itself didn't appear particularly severe compared to many racing accidents. Earnhardt's black number 3 Chevrolet made contact with Sterling Marlin's car, slid off the track's steep banking, and crashed into the outside wall. As the race finished and celebrations began for winner Michael Waltrip, who ironically drove for Earnhardt's team, few suspected the gravity of what had just occurred. Within hours, NASCAR President Mike Helton delivered the news that stunned the world: "We've lost Dale Earnhardt." The 49-year-old racing legend had suffered a basilar skull fracture due to the violent whipping motion of his head in the impact. Despite being rapidly transported to Halifax Medical Center, he was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. Earnhardt's death came as a profound shock, not just because of his iconic status, but because he had always seemed invincible. With 7 Winston Cup championships, a record he shared with Richard Petty at the time, 76 Winston Cup victories, and a reputation as one of the toughest competitors in the sport, Earnhardt had been a dominant force in NASCAR for decades. The aftermath of Earnhardt's death transformed racing safety. NASCAR implemented mandatory head and neck restraints, improved barrier systems, and redesigned cars with safety as a priority. The hands, head, and neck support device, which Earnhardt had refused to wear, became mandatory equipment. Some estimate these changes have saved dozens of lives in the years since. His legacy extends far beyond the safety improvements. Earnhardt's son, Dale Jr., continued racing and became one of the sport's most popular figures. The Earnhardt racing empire expanded, and the legend of the Intimidator has only grown with time. NASCAR fans still raise 3 fingers on the third lap of races to honor his memory and his car number. Perhaps most telling about Earnhardt's impact was the unprecedented mourning that followed his death. An estimated 3,000 people attended his memorial service, which was broadcast live on television. Fans created memorials outside Dale Earnhardt Inc. and along highways throughout the South. His passing was covered not just by sports media but as a major news event across America, reflecting his status as not just a racing champion, but a genuine American cultural icon. Number 5. Ayrton Senna Formula One Racing. The 1994 San Marino Grand Prix at the Imola circuit in Italy began under a dark cloud. On Saturday during qualifying, Austrian driver Roland Ratzenberger had been killed in a horrific crash. Many drivers, including 3-time world champion Ayrton Senna, were deeply disturbed by this tragedy. Some reports suggest Senna had even considered not racing the next day. Sunday, May 1, 1994, dawned with Senna on pole position, as he had been so many times before. The Brazilian driver, considered by many to be the greatest Formula One racer of all time, led from the start. Then, on the 7th lap, his Williams car failed to negotiate the Tamburello corner, one of the fastest on the circuit. The blue and white machine slammed into a concrete barrier at over 140 mph. The race was immediately stopped. Medical teams rushed to Senna's car, where it was apparent the situation was grave. Though he was airlifted to Magyar Hospital in Bologna, Ayrton Senna was pronounced dead at 6:40 p.m. local time. He was just 34 years old. The official cause of death was listed as massive head injuries sustained when a suspension arm penetrated his helmet. Senna's death sent shockwaves throughout the world, but particularly in his native Brazil. The government declared 3 days of national mourning, an honor typically reserved for heads of state. An estimated 3 million people lined the streets of São Paulo for his funeral procession. His pallbearers included fellow racing champions Alain Prost, Jackie Stewart, Emerson Fittipaldi, and Nelson Piquet. What made Senna's death particularly shocking was his almost mythical status within the sport. With 41 Grand Prix victories, 65 pole positions, and 3 world championships, he was already a legend. His incredible skill in wet conditions earned him the nickname Rainmaster. His intense rivalry with Alain Prost had defined Formula One throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s. The tragedy at Imola prompted a complete overhaul of safety in Formula One. Track designs were modified, car cockpits were reinforced, and crash tests became more rigorous. The sport's governing body, FIA, established the Expert Advisory Safety Committee. These changes have been so effective that Senna was the last driver fatality in Formula One until Jules Bianchi's death in 2015, following a crash at the 2014 Japanese Grand Prix. Beyond his racing achievements, Senna was known for his humanitarian work in Brazil. After his death, his sister established the Instituto Ayrton Senna, which has helped educate millions of Brazilian children. His legacy lives on through this foundation, continuing the work he had begun during his lifetime. Even decades after his passing, Senna remains an iconic figure in motorsport. Films, books, and documentaries continue to examine his life and career. For many, he represents the perfect combination of raw talent, fierce determination, and philosophical depth. His famous quote, "If you no longer go for a gap that exists, you are no longer a racing driver," encapsulates the fearlessness that defined him and ultimately contributed to his tragic end. Number 4. Payne Stewart Golf. October 25, 1999, began as a routine travel day for golf champion Payne Stewart. The 42-year-old golfer, fresh off helping the United States win the Ryder Cup and looking forward to the Tour Championship, boarded a Learjet 35 in Orlando, Florida. The plane was bound for Dallas, where Stewart was scheduled to inspect a potential site for the 2000 U.S. Open. Shortly after takeoff, something went terribly wrong. The aircraft climbed to its assigned altitude of 39,000 feet, but when air traffic controllers tried to contact the plane, they received no response. U.S. Air Force and Air National Guard aircraft were scrambled to intercept the Learjet. What they witnessed was chilling. The windows of the aircraft appeared frosted over, suggesting catastrophic cabin depressurization. For over 4 hours, the ghost plane continued flying on autopilot across several states as fighter pilots observed helplessly, unable to intervene. Military pilots could see no movement inside the cabin. Eventually, the aircraft ran out of fuel and crashed into a field near Mena, South Dakota. All 6 people aboard, including Stewart, were killed. Investigators determined that the cabin had lost pressure, causing all occupants to lose consciousness from hypoxia oxygen deprivation long before the crash. Stewart wasn't just any golfer. With his trademark +4s, knee-length knickers, and Tam O'Shanter hat, he cut a distinctive figure on the golf course, deliberately evoking the sport's golden age. But his old-fashioned attire belied a thoroughly modern game. Stewart had won 3 major championships, including the 1989 PGA Championship and the U.S. Open in 1991 and 1999. His final U.S. Open victory, just months before his death, provided one of golf's most memorable moments. On the 72nd hole at Pinehurst No. 2, Stewart sank a 15-foot putt to defeat Phil Mickelson by a single stroke. The image of Stewart, fist pumped forward in celebration, was later immortalized in a bronze statue at the course. Off the course, Stewart was known for his Christian faith and charitable work. He had matured from a brash young player to a respected statesman of the game. He left behind his wife, Tracy, and 2 children, Chelsea and Aaron. The golfing world paid tribute to Stewart in numerous ways. At the 1999 American Express Championship, held shortly after his death, players wore +4s in his honor during the final round. The PGA Tour created the Payne Stewart Award, given annually to the player who best exemplifies Stewart's values of character, charity, and sportsmanship. Perhaps most poignantly, at the 2000 U.S. Open at Pebble Beach, players gathered on the 18th fairway and simultaneously hit balls into the Pacific Ocean as a tribute. Tiger Woods, who won that tournament by a record 15 strokes, later said, "I think Payne was looking down and saying, 'That's how you play Pebble Beach.'" 20 years after his passing, Stewart remains one of golf's most beloved figures, remembered as much for his character as for his considerable achievements on the course. Number 3. Sarah Burke Freestyle Skiing, January 2012. The world of extreme sports held its collective breath as news filtered out from a Utah hospital. Sarah Burke, the pioneering freestyle skier who had pushed for the inclusion of superpipe skiing in the Olympics, was fighting for her life after a training accident at Park City Mountain Resort. 9 days earlier, the 29-year-old Canadian had been practicing in the Eagle superpipe when she fell and struck her head. Though she was wearing a helmet, the impact caused a tear in her vertebral artery, which led to a cardiac arrest on the scene. Emergency responders performed CPR and airlifted her to University of Utah Hospital, where she was placed in a medically induced coma. Despite the best efforts of medical teams, Burke succumbed to her injuries on January 19, 2012. The announcement devastated not just the skiing community but the entire world of action sports. Burke had been the face of women's freestyle skiing, a trailblazer who had helped transform the sport from a niche activity to an Olympic event. What made Burke's death particularly poignant was that she wouldn't live to see her dream realized. As the most dominant female superpipe skier of her generation, with 4 X Games gold medals and a world championship to her name, Burke had been the leading advocate for including women's halfpipe skiing in the Winter Olympics. Her efforts proved successful when the International Olympic Committee announced the event would debut at the 2014 Sochi Games, but Burke would never get to compete on that stage. Burke's influence extended far beyond her competition results. She was the first woman to land a 720, a 900, and a 1080 in competition. Her willingness to attempt tricks previously performed only by men raised the bar for female skiers worldwide. Fellow athletes described her as a mentor who encouraged other women to push their limits. Born in Barrie, Ontario, Burke had identified her life's passion early, taking up skiing at age 5. By her teens, she was competing against boys because there were no girls' competitions. This experience fueled her determination to create opportunities for female athletes. She often paid her own way to competitions and worked summer jobs to fund her winter skiing, a far cry from the sponsored status she would later achieve as the sport's premier female athlete. Off the slopes, Burke was known for her warm personality and commitment to charity work. She was married to fellow skier Rory Bushfield, and the couple had appeared together on reality television. After her death, her organs were donated, saving the lives of others. The skiing world mourned Burke deeply. The winter of the 10th Games dedicated the Superpipe event to her memory, and competitors wore "Remember Sarah" stickers on their helmets. When women's halfpipe skiing finally debuted at the Sochi Olympics in 2014, competitors scattered Burke's ashes at the Olympic halfpipe and atop a mountain in Sochi. American gold medalist Maddie Bowman dedicated her victory to Burke, saying, "She's been with me all day." Burke's legacy lives on through the Sarah Burke Foundation, which provides scholarships to aspiring winter sports athletes and supports causes she cared about. The hashtag #CelebrateSarah continues to appear on social media when female skiers push boundaries in the sport she helped create. As Canadian Freestyle Skiing Association CEO Peter Judge put it, "She was a great person and a great athlete, and the world is a lesser place without her." Number 2. Kobe Bryant basketball. January 26, 2020 started as an ordinary Sunday in Southern California. Then news broke that would shake not just the basketball world, but the entire globe. A helicopter had crashed in the foggy hills of Calabasas. Initial reports were confusing and contradictory. Then came the devastating confirmation: NBA legend Kobe Bryant was dead at 41. The details emerged slowly. Bryant had been traveling with his 13-year-old daughter Gianna and 7 others to a youth basketball tournament at his Mamba Sports Academy. The Sikorsky S-76B helicopter encountered thick fog in the San Fernando Valley. The pilot, Ara Zoban, became spatially disoriented in the conditions. The aircraft crashed into a hillside at high speed, killing all 9 occupants instantly. The world's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Fans gathered spontaneously outside Staples Center in Los Angeles, where Bryant had played his entire 20-year NBA career with the Lakers. NBA games scheduled that day continued, but were marked by tributes, teams taking 24-second shot clock violations or 8-second backcourt violations to honor Bryant's jersey numbers. Social media was flooded with tributes from fellow athletes, celebrities, and political leaders around the world. Bryant's death hit particularly hard because he was in the midst of a remarkable second act. After retiring in 2016 with a 60-point performance in his final game, he had won an Academy Award for his animated short film Dear Basketball, written children's books, and was deeply involved in coaching his daughter Gianna's basketball team. He had embraced fatherhood of his 4 daughters and was expanding his business empire through Kobe Inc. and Bryant Stibble, a venture capital firm. His basketball achievements alone would have secured his legacy. 5 NBA championships, 2 Olympic gold medals, 18 All-Star appearances, 1 MVP award, 2 NBA Finals MVPs, a career 33,643 points, 4th on the all-time scoring list until LeBron James passed him the night before his death. Bryant had congratulated James on Twitter in what would become his final social media post. The tragedy was compounded by the presence of Gianna Bryant on the helicopter. Jiggy, as she was known, had been showing promise as a basketball player under her father's coaching. Videos of them discussing basketball courtside at NBA games had gone viral in the months before their deaths. Bryant had proudly called her Mambacita, a nod to his own Black Mamba nickname. The other victims included 2 of Gianna's teammates, Alyssa Altobelli and Peyton Chester, along with their parents John and Carrie Altobelli and Sarah Chester. Christina Mauser, an assistant coach, also perished, leaving behind a husband and 3 children. In the aftermath, investigations revealed the helicopter was not equipped with a terrain awareness and warning system that might have alerted the pilot to the hillside. The tragedy prompted calls for stricter regulations on helicopter operations in low visibility conditions. Bryant's memorial service, held on February 24, 2020, symbolically chosen for the numbers 2 and 24, representing Gianna's and Kobe's jerseys, featured emotional speeches from Michael Jordan, Shaquille O'Neal, and Bryant's widow, Vanessa. Jordan, often reserved in public appearances, broke down as he called Bryant a little brother and said, "When Kobe died, a piece of me died." Bryant had been a polarizing figure earlier in his career, particularly after sexual assault allegations in 2003. The criminal case was dropped and a civil suit was settled privately. However, his death brought reflection on his complete legacy, the flawed human who had appeared to grow substantially in his later years, becoming an advocate for women's sports and devoting himself to family life. On August 24, 8/24, Los Angeles declared Mamba Day in his honor. The Lakers won the 2020 NBA championship and dedicated their victory to his memory. Athletes across all sports continue to honor him with gestures, equipment tributes, and in their comments about his influence. Bryant's mantra of Mamba mentality, his philosophy of constant improvement, relentless work ethic, and competitive fire, has become a cultural touchstone that transcends sports. Number 1. Duk Koo Kim Boxing. Would you step into a ring knowing it might be your last day alive? On November 13, 1982, a fateful boxing match at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas would forever change the sport. Duk Koo Kim, a relatively unknown 23-year-old challenger from South Korea, faced off against the WBA lightweight champion Ray "Boom Boom" Mancini in a nationally televised bout. Kim had risen from poverty in South Korea, working as a shoe shine boy and living in a shack without electricity or running water. Boxing represented his escape, his shot at a better life. Before the fight, he had written on his hotel mirror, "Live or die." This eerie premonition would prove tragically accurate. The match was brutal from the opening bell. Kim was known for his aggressive style and remarkable durability, which was on full display as he absorbed punishment but kept coming forward. For 13 grueling rounds, the two men traded punches. Mancini later recalled that Kim hit so hard it felt like someone was breaking sticks over my body. In the 14th round, Mancini caught Kim with a punishing right hand that sent the Korean fighter crashing to the canvas. Kim managed to rise to his feet but collapsed again, and referee Richard Green stopped the fight. Kim was carried from the ring on a stretcher and rushed to Desert Springs Hospital. Doctors discovered a subdural hematoma, bleeding in his brain. Despite emergency surgery to relieve the pressure, Kim never regained consciousness and died 4 days later. The repercussions of this tragedy extended far beyond the two fighters involved. Within weeks, the WBC reduced championship fights from 15 rounds to 12 rounds, a change the WBA and IBF would soon adopt as well. Boxing implemented more rigorous medical examinations and required CAT scans before fights. Ringside physicians gained increased authority to stop bouts. Some jurisdictions mandated longer rest periods between fights. For Ray Mancini, the aftermath was devastating. Though he had done nothing wrong, simply competing in his sport as expected, he was consumed by guilt. "I was never the same fighter after that," Mancini later admitted. "I never wanted to hurt anyone again." Though he continued boxing, winning some and losing others, the spark that had made him a champion dimmed noticeably. The tragedy didn't end with Kim. His mother, overcome with grief, committed suicide 3 months after her son's death by drinking a bottle of pesticide. The referee, Richard Green, also took his own life just months after the fight, though whether this was directly related to Kim's death remains unclear. Kim left behind a fiancée who was pregnant with their son, Kim Kai-wan, who would be born the following summer. For 3 decades, Kai-wan grew up knowing little about his father as the family avoided discussing the painful subject. The story took an unexpected turn in 2011 when Mancini, still carrying the emotional burden of that fateful fight, traveled to Korea to meet with Kim's son and mother as part of a documentary called The Good Son. The meeting brought a measure of closure for both families. Kai Wan told Mancini, "I don't blame you," while Mancini presented him with a cherished memento, the champion's ring from the fight that had claimed his father's life. Duk Koo Kim was posthumously inducted into the Korean Sports Hall of Fame, his journey from extreme poverty to championship contender recognized as remarkable regardless of its tragic end. His death, while horrific, likely saved other lives through the safety reforms it prompted. In boxing circles, Kim's name has become symbolic of the sport's inherent dangers and the importance of fighter safety. Today, the image of those words scrawled on a hotel mirror, "Live or die," remains one of boxing's most chilling moments. The sport continues to navigate the difficult balance between preserving its fundamental nature as a contest of combat while taking measures to protect those who step into the ring. What price is too high for our entertainment? How do we reconcile our fascination with dangerous sports with the very real human cost they sometimes exact?